Right, so we are live now for Fireside Chat number 101. I think once again, not a whole lot of news this week. I know for me, mostly just been working on the song. A few odds and ends. I know we've been having some discussions in the Historians Guild about some different lore stuff that Solites wanted to kind of dive into, so that's been fun. Um, really looking for topics this week. Um, I think for the most part, it's going to be kind of a repetition of previous fireside chats, where essentially, yeah, song is number one priority right now. Do still have the same kind of plans down the road of looking further wiki work, working on the codex as well. There are some plans as well to look at recruitment licenses and some kind of officer school, officer certification as well, which I've talked about in the past. In addition, possibly some more House Dippity stuff behind the scenes. We'll see about that. That's a bit linked to another thing, which is the kind of system of house organization, or rather, kind of combining our organization system into just houses, but utilizing, of course, ranks and stuff like that. Somehow finding a way to work that all out, which is something we've talked about a bit in the past. Um, it's something I want to keep brainstorming because I think it could be pretty good, but it's still not like. Again, I don't want to give the false impression that this is something that's right around the corner or even guaranteed to happen. But I think it's a really interesting idea or set of ideas, and it's, if nothing else, a lot of fun to kind of just theorize how it could work and see if we can come up with a system that works really well. So yeah, I've kind of been mulling things over, thinking about that further. I've got a lot of kind of documents with sort of random scribblings of ideas and systems of organization. I think most logically there would be some type of leadership position for a house and a leadership position for each family, as there is, but rather than being Lord or Earl, these would be um, positions in the traditional chain of command, and they would probably require some kind of training and time and effort and demonstration of, the necessary knowledge and skill set to earn them. And as far as what they'd be called, I really like Lord Captain for the leader of a house, and then rolling with some sort of a more of a military system for ranks. I think I'm a huge fan of that. I think it kind of supports what I'm going for, which is kind of a certain type of behavior in the clan, or lack of bad behavior, I suppose. Just kind of a certain level of etiquette, at least on a surface level. I generally am okay with, like, like people hanging out in voice chats and, of course, like joking. Like, you might sit down and write a rule and say, okay, we need a rule that you can't insult people, which might make sense on the surface, but then you're going to have a situation where somebody says something jokingly to a friend and somebody else takes that out of context, and all of a sudden that's a rule break where maybe it shouldn't be. Or you might have the opposite, where somebody says something genuinely insulting, then simply says it's a joke, and then, well, what do you do with that? So that's kind of a problem, obviously, we've grappled with for a very, very long time. So generally, I like to sort of, say that what we need to do is kind of maintain that atmosphere wherever possible, and then as the rules are currently written, and I've considered making some edits, if nothing else, to simplify, just because, well, I like having codified rules. I think the more text and the longer it gets, kind of, it can become a bit of a burden, and I would rather things are just easier to understand and simpler in that way. So that's something I would think about as well, is just how complicated are the rules? Is it possible to simplify them in some way without diminishing what they're supposed to be doing, which is saying that, like, there should be just a night and day extremely sharp divide between the vast majority of random Discord servers and groups and, you know, forums or websites, social media sites, stuff like that, and the atmosphere in WA. It should be completely different, at least to somebody who first arrives. Like, it really shouldn't get that much different in private chat as far as, like, at a bare minimum, and this is like a corny line that's repeated like a billion times, but like a idea of respect, which I think is something you can have where you can like poke fun at friends and kind of joke around a lot, but there should still be that kind of baseline, you know, underlying respect there. And of course, that's something that's kind of really difficult to put into like words in a set of rules, but it's also difficult to enforce. Because again, you run into problems like I was mentioning just previously, where people might claim they're joking, or they might, you know, the joke could be taken out of context either way, either direction, really. So, I don't know, finding a really good way to have rules and enforce those rules with all of that in mind is pretty difficult, but that's kind of what I'm going for, to explain a bit of the direction and the desired atmosphere, basically. I mean, certainly I've had a lot of discussions about looking back in previous eras of WA, like the Third Fleet era, which in my mind is kind of this idealized WA. I know it certainly wasn't actually like that, you know, back 10 years ago, but actually further than that, really, 11, now that I think about it. But I think pursuing my kind of rose-tinted glasses memories of that, I think that it's possible to create something really cool. And that's kind of the general, what's sort of dictating on the general direction is I like that sort of set of kind of, I like to use the term military, and I think I use that in some of our documents and stuff like that. Kind of that idea of this is how, you know, you should carry yourself, and you should like care about the fact that you're representing WA and stuff like that. Like if you have WA tags on, you're playing League, you shouldn't be, you know, griefing or being toxic or whatever, as an example. And that should be both because we shouldn't be recruiting people who are doing that, and also because people who do join the clan should care about the clan and its like image and the fact that they're representing it enough that they don't do that kind of thing. And I think in the past it's been something like, oh, don't do that with tags on. But to be totally honest, if you're in WA, you should never do that. It doesn't matter if you're an alternate account or something like that. That's the whole point. Like that's exactly what like the clan stands for. So if you're the type of person that thinks that just like being terrible to other people in a game is cool or funny, then you really just shouldn't be in the clan. It kind of just goes against the entire purpose. So really that's kind of the truth behind lines like, oh, you know, you shouldn't do that with tags on or whatever. But of course there's a limit to enforcement, obviously, like, and we're not looking to like control every facet of people's lives or whatever, or something ridiculous. But I think as a gaming clan, like, we're just really pursuing certain things. And like I said, what we want is like a very sharp divide between like what we are like and what everyone else is like. And if that doesn't exist, then that's bad. I mean, it's pointless, really. Like, that's the fundamental notion of WA, is basically that divide. And of course, people each say they have their own ideas about WA. You know, they have their own interpretations, but that's what I'm saying the fundamental notion of WA is that idea that we are very, very different. But, yeah, it's a nice rant about rules and the thinking behind them. So yeah, I think that's something I've been looking at, is possibly editing the rules, just trying to simplify a little bit. But I think another thing that's important is recruiting, because really all of us are recruited into the clan. So at some point, the system of recruitment is going to interact with everyone in the clan, eventually. some of us were recruited 10 years ago, so obviously changing a recruiting rule now is not going to impact that. But that's what I like about the idea of a recruitment license, is finding some way to ensure that everyone is recruiting should have had every opportunity to gain the knowledge and expertise to recruit people that will succeed in WA and fit what we're trying to do here, rather than negatively impact it. And I recognize it's not going to be perfect. That's not always going to happen. But I think that we can certainly improve things by having that kind of system. I mean, I want to call it a filter, but having that system of kind of training people on how to properly recruit is essentially what we're going for with this recruitment license system. So we'll see based on timing if that's something that I work on very soon at the same time as the song or not. We'll see. Haven't made any any gains on the song that are easy to put into words. Continue to work on it. As I think I said last week, all the drums are done, so tracking almost every instrument is done, save for guitars. There are guitar tracks for all of the parts, but a lot of them are not perfect, so I want to go through and re-record some of them, listen to them, do some editing. Fortunately, not Pro Tools magically make it awesome, but just removing extra bits of noise and stuff from before and after a certain passage begins where there shouldn't be any noise. So nothing too magical, but obviously it cleans up the song a lot and is something that has to be done. So that's kind of my priority right now. Yeah, but I think with that, I'll probably end the Fireside chat. I'll have Court of the High King right after, and yeah, it'll go for a little while, but then we'll have another Fireside Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific next week. So see everybody for one or both of those.